We sold out of everything we had. It was literally 1997. The market was on fire. It's hard to believe, but at the time we were dealing with fax machines, and people would call and say, "Hey, I see this property you have at such and such address. Tell me about it." And I'd tell them, and I would do the deal on the phone. Okay, we'll take it. When can we have it? And I'm like, okay, is this a joke? Is this one of my buddies from New York teasing me? And it wasn't. And we actually transacted 3 or 4 deals via fax machine and never met the buyer until closing, just because of how hot the product was that we had. And there was no product. They didn't even have signs. A gentleman that I mentored under for a day, Tommy Drake, out of Cary, when I first came to visit the market, we went to Carol Annick, had this 10th annual conference, and at the time, Tom Fetzer was the mayor, and he said, we just reduced property taxes by 30%, and all these things are going on. We're bringing in these thousands of jobs. And I walked out of there with Tommy and said, "You don't understand. I've never seen anything like this before." For us, it's, especially in New York, we raised property taxes. That was always the comment. And you couldn't give stuff away. It just wasn't a market. It was just dying on the vine. And I was not a big fish in a small pond by any means, but I was doing really well. I had my construction business, I had real estate business, and I had souvenir stores in downtown Niagara Falls that I had started after urban renewal came through and wiped it all out. I saw an opportunity there. So I had some income stream to be able to make the move and take the chance. And it was probably one of the hardest things I did, moving down here, not knowing anybody. But one of the things I became really good at, for those that know me, is networking. No matter where I went or what I did, this is who I am and this is what I do. And I also made it a point to let people know that I'm not a big shot from New York, even though I always dressed real well and had nice cars. I'm just here to make and earn a living and make my way. I'm not here to take anything away from anybody. And after, a year or 2, people finally realized that. Once I got done with Russell Gay, after the first year, we really sold out of product. I went to work for CB Richard Ellis. When I interviewed with them, it was CB Cole. The day I started, it became CB Richard Ellis. They took on the European version, so they became worldwide. Worked for them for 3.5 years. At that time, one of the main reasons they hired me, the 2 guys that owned it, was they really wanted to get involved in the office condominium market and learn how to do that business because they saw how hot it was. So we did quite a bit. Oh gosh, I don't know, maybe 500,000 square feet of small office condos, anything from 500 square feet to 5,000 square feet. Buildings in Durham, Chapel Hill, Raleigh, Cary, Apex, nothing in Knightdale. But for the most part, cover the market with that. And then CB at that time, 3.5 years later, early 2000s, was contemplating taking their version of CB corporate and selling it. They were basically breaking up some of the branches for local ownership. So we tried to do a management buyout of CB with the 2 owners that just got bought out 3 years prior or 4 years prior at half the price that CB corporate had paid for them, and it didn't work out. At that point in time, I broke away with one of the other brokers, Ed Hull, and him and I formed Triangle Commercial. And we figured that Triangle Commercial, we were just going to represent tenants and buyers, and the only landlord work we would do was for property that we had ownership in. And we started buying some of the small office condominiums. For example, we did a project in North Durham on Roxborough Road, and I'm trying to think of the name of the group. It was the Big Eye Ear and Dental Wholesaler Group. It was a $1 billion company, but they leased a 3,500 square foot space off the bat for 5 years. And we asked the partnership, hey, can we buy this suite? Because they were merchant builders just buying, building, and selling. So they sold us a suite. We used, I think we got about $15,000 commission off the sale. We put that in, and then Ed and I ponied up, I want to say another $15,000. And we had a nice little investment deal going. It was our first one. From there, Emeritus, that's what the name of the group. So Emeritus needed to expand. Well, in the office condominium market, it's very rare that you're going to have another suite next to you that will be available, because once they're sold, and people usually stay. But as it turned out, there was another 800 square feet that came available next to us, and we were able to buy that, expand them again. At that point in time, we sold it, and we sold it at a really hefty profit. We had after about 4 years, we had over $250,000 equity in that deal based on the investment sale, which really opened our eyes into, hey, we're onto something here. I mean, for us learning, because most people don't know about that. So we sold that for like $650,000 or $675,000. We had $250,000 or $275,000 in equity. we took that, we bought a warehouse on Crabtree. And this was the ideal CCIM, SAOR, whatever analysis you want to use. The deal was a 30,000 foot warehouse on 3 acres with overhead doors, drive-in doors, dock doors, sprinkler, high ceiling, small office. It was the perfect building to find that was easily rented. The tenant in there was paying $2 a square foot and the market was $4.50. They had 6 months left on a lease. This is golden because we said, hey, guess what? They're going to have to go with us with a new lease. Next thing you know, we'll double the rent. We'll be making $60,000 a year clear on this thing. We're golden. Well, we get in and 2008 hits. Okay, 2008 hits. The tenant says we're moving out. Well, now we're upside down. The tenant's getting ready to move out, so we go put the building for sale. Fortunately, we sold it. So we sold that building, moved on to the next. I just happened to be, my son and I were riding a lot of dirt bikes, motorcycles, and I happened to be in a motorcycle shop buying some parts. And I had a client that had asked me, he said, hey, if you ever run across anybody that wants to sell a motorcycle business, let me know where they buy and sell. And he particularly wanted Harley Davidson, which is very hard to achieve, very expensive also. So I happened to run into this guy, Mike, and I said, who I was buying parts from. I said, hey, by any chance you'd be interested in selling this? He said, I'd sell you this, I'd sell you that. And I even own a plaza at Preston Corners in Cary, I'd sell you. I said, excuse me? He said, yeah, we own a corner at Preston that my father and I built. I'm getting divorced. I got to sell it. So that was on a Friday. On Tuesday, I was under contract with him on Preston Corners, and because we had sold the building on Crabtree. So the point of the story is we went from a $15,000 investment, and then fast forward 4 years from that point, we bought the plaza in Cary for, I think, $2.6 or $2.7 million. Now, nobody wanted to invest with us because at the time, the Cary rents were $20 and $21. And they said, there's no way you can maintain that. Those rents are too expensive. But it's Preston Corners. It's the only one in Cary, and everybody knows it, and it's a great location. And it's a 12,000 foot building with, I think, 7 tenants.